So good morning, everyone. My name is Geraldine O'Reilly and I work at Clio as our UK Regional Marketing Manager. And I'm delighted to be bringing you today's event, our 10th and penultimate in our year-long Making of a Law Firm series. So we've been running this series throughout 2021 and it follows 4 law firm leaders who are on the road to building new and successful UK law firms, all 4 having been established in 2020. This series is intended to as a support forum for new firms, for firm owners, and those thinking of taking the leap and starting their own legal business at some point in the near future. So today we'll be discussing time management and the elusive work-life balance. And today and throughout the year, it will be appreciated if you could share our support for the series and for our leaders on social media using the hashtag Making a Law Firm. Our leaders are kindly taking time out of their busy startup life to come and share their experiences with the community. So they deserve a thank you here and there along the way. So this morning we have 2 of our 4 leaders from the series rejoining us. We have Elena and Alistair. Unfortunately, Natalie, who was due to join, had to cancel due to a work constraint this morning, but you could say she was, in a way, practicing some time management there as well. So just a little bit about Alistair and Elena. Alistair Wells is founder of Tend Legal and is an experienced commercial solicitor. He co-founded Tend Legal with his wife Shona in 2020 with the aim of finding a better way to deliver amazing legal services to startups and SMEs. Alistair is known for his approachable manner, zen-like calm, and clear commercial legal advice. And we've also got Elena Manukian, who's partner and founder at The Injury Solicitor. In 2020, after seeing that legal services could be delivered from almost anywhere, Elena decided to launch her own firm. Specializing in personal injury law and being a small firm, Elena is able to offer clients a personalized service, which you simply don't get from large firms in the UK. We've also brought back Tanya Katuri. Some of you may recall Tanya from our session back in June, all about leadership and courage. Tanya is a confidence and courage coach who brings a wealth of corporate experience to her role, having worked in credit hedge fund sales for JP Morgan and Barclays for almost 9 years before moving to property management. Tanya is a mother of 3, has retrained as a barefoot executive coach, and is an accredited ACC coach with the International Coaching Federation. And Tanya opened her business to support entrepreneurs and professionals, including some in the legal sector, in facing the challenges of working in a corporate environment. Her courses and training include subjects such as time management, the subject for today, clarity and values, self-awareness, goal setting, and leadership. Thank you for joining us today, Tanya.
Thank you for having me in this wonderful introduction.
Brilliant. Before we get into it today, I do think there are a couple of things that we want to touch on. So today's session will be 60 minutes and we'll be sticking to that and practicing what we're preaching. We want lots of Q&A, so please do pop questions and comments into the chat. If you have a specific question for somebody, please do mention who it's for in it. It will help as we're moderating later. The session will be recorded and sent out tomorrow, and the Q&A function is mainly for if you want to put a question specifically to panelists, but we do encourage more so selecting everyone in the chat so that you can everyone can see your comments and questions. Wonderful. So as mentioned, I work at Clio, and Clio is on a mission to transform the legal experience for all. And this series is part of that mission. As I always like to mention with this series, we won't be going into a demo of Clio today, but I do recognize that there is, of course, a major tie into today's subject, in that Clio's technology exists to help legal practitioners and firms manage workload and keep on top of tasks and time. So I'm going to launch a quick poll. Just bear with me one moment, and I'll leave this poll running for a few moments. And this poll will, if you're interested in learning more, let us know via the poll. One of our team will be in touch. But whilst it's running, I do want to cover off on a couple of points, which will help you select an option from the poll. So on the screen right now is a slide that demonstrates a condensed version of the typical legal client journey. So Clio has solutions to help with 2 specific areas of that journey. Clio Grow very much focused on that first part of the journey, marketing through to conversion. So before a client officially becomes a client. And then you've got Clio Manage, and that is our core legal case management solution that helps with that second stage of the journey, managing existing clients, organizing cases, and all of the tedious tasks that go around, for example, month-end billing, and getting updates all at a glance. Together, Clio Manage and Clio Grow form Clio Suite. So you'll see that option in your poll. If you're interested in both, select Clio Suite. If you're interested in just Clio Manage, select Clio Manage. So Clio Grow, that first stage solution, enables law firms to deliver a more client-centered experience by automating the client intake process and saving you time. So quite relevant again for today's subject. With Clio Grow's CRM software, you'll be able to engage and retain new clients in a matter of moments. You can connect it to your website by adding intake forms and even your calendar, both Outlook and Google, for easier scheduling, saving time and duplication. With Clio Grow, you get access to your entire database from anywhere. So lots more as well included there, but those are just some of the key points relevant to today's subject around Clio Grow. Then with Clio Manage, you get the core legal case management software that helps you with that second stage of the journey, managing clients, organizing cases, automating tedious tasks, month-end billing. Clio Manage includes unlimited document storage, accurate and easy time recording on any device, whether that be your phone or computer, and integrations with over 90 partners. The list goes on. So there are two areas within Clio Manage I'd like to touch on, and bear with me another moment or so. Those two areas, the first one being legal time recording software. So with Clio, you can track every moment, no matter where you are or what you're doing. You can run a timer whilst working or log time entries after the fact. You can track time from any device via the mobile app available on Android or iOS, or on your computer at home or in the office, wherever you are. You can log time from calendar entries, tasks, and even emails. And all of that, you can then generate quick and up-to-date reports to see where you're spending your time or where your team is spending their time, and filter by group, by date, matter, user, or status. So that's just a very brief summary of the legal time recording solution. Also wants to touch on the calendar solution. So we know that lawyers live and die by their diaries, and that's why having a strong calendar solution is essential for easier life. With Clio, you can view your diary events by case and access them from anywhere. There's a two-way sync with Microsoft and Google Calendar. You can also, as mentioned in the earlier slide, create time entries from client appointments. You can access your entire firm schedule and share events with your team. And you can also connect to Clio Scheduler for easier appointment booking with existing or new clients. So removing that back and forth of what time is available. All this, I'm mentioning time. If you're playing a game, you could be counting how many times I'm mentioning that word this morning. So at this point, I'm going to close our poll. And we will get into our discussion. So ending poll now. And if you hadn't had a chance to vote, you can pop a note into the chat and we can follow up from there. So to our topic of discussion this morning, time management for a better work-life balance. So when it comes to running your own firm, and serving clients, it can feel like the work is never done. But for the sake of your well-being and that of every member of your firm, finding the right time management solutions to ensure a healthy work-life balance is essential. But what are some of those solutions? Well, at this point, we're going to pass over to Tanya, who's going to take us through and help co-host our discussion portion of this morning's event. Tanya.
Thank you so much, Geraldine, and thanks again for the introduction. So as you mentioned, I used to work in the corporate world before retraining as a coach, and I've been helping over 80 people around executives around time management and other different topics. And I find that the best way actually to to tackle procrastination and to talk about time management is to hear from other leaders and to hear about their struggles. And I will bring up other pain points from my other clients and what has helped them, tools and techniques. We did a preparation before this call, and we want to cover different topics such as values, prioritizing, focusing, making sure that we don't procrastinate, that we prioritize our tasks, and knowing how to set boundaries. So if any of those topics resonate most with you, please use the chat and make sure you ask questions relevant to those topics. And we will also focus on overwhelm, because all of them, because one of the main things that we realize is actually that time management is about managing the overwhelm. So I wanted to start by letting Alistair and Elena introduce themselves in a time management manner, in the sense that I want to hear about, what was their struggles, their pain points, and what was helpful to them, as a quick introduction before we move on to the juicy topics.
Yeah, so I'll start. So my name's Eleanor, and I started the Injury Solicitor, which is a personal injury firm, in December last year. So I am shortly coming up to my 1-year anniversary, and starting a business and still working as a solicitor, you are pulled in all directions. Like, when I say that I have commitments, like there are things that I can't keep on top of, and I quickly realized that starting my business, it wasn't just about doing the legal work, it was everything else, the business development side, all the marketing side, everything else, and obviously my life outside of law as well. I became quite overwhelmed. It became quite stressful. I wasn't enjoying a lot of days. And then in July, I actually I got COVID, and my husband got COVID, and it really knocked him off his feet. For me, the symptoms weren't too bad, and I managed to work all the way through having COVID. Obviously working from home, I could do that quite safely, but it made me realize that actually I couldn't sustain that. Like, if I became unwell or I became poorly, my business would suffer, I would suffer. And at that point, business came first. It came before me, and that made me change. Like, that really made me change, like, my lifestyle and the way I was approaching work. And actually, I put myself first. And ever since I did that, that was the single best decision I could have done. Like, my time, I prioritize myself. Work and my business is almost secondary, but my business has actually been more successful, or I've worked better and I felt happier since I made that change. Yeah.
Elena, thanks for sharing that. And before we move on to Alistair, I just wanted to pause here, because you've actually brought up the main topic that we start with clients when we talk about time management and overwhelm. And very often it's our body telling us that maybe the pace is a bit too fast for us. We've maybe scheduled too much during the time that's allocated, and we've prioritized the wrong things at the wrong time. And I think the main thing to take away from that is the health, the priority, that the first priority, which should be health. And we know that, but we forget it. We don't allow to create time in our calendar for health, because if you think about it, if you don't sleep well, and if you don't eat properly or healthy for you, or if you don't allocate time for your health, then your productivity will be impacted for sure. But we don't necessarily create time for that. And we will talk about time boxing in more detail for those who are not familiar with it. And I know that you both use that quite a lot. But creating time for health is a priority when we do time management. And I'm guilty of that myself. But if you don't do that at the end of the week, the overwhelm will catch up for sure. So Elena, thanks for sharing that rough patch. The body kind of told you it was time for you to prioritize health, and it has had a positive impact on your business as well.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
just on that point, before I forget this, I don't know if anybody listens to the podcast on the Diary of a CEO, but Jimmy Carr was a recent guest, and there was one thing that he said that resonated with me so much. And he said, "You're on a plane and it's going down. You know, you're going to crash. What do? You put your oxygen mask on first, because you're of absolutely no use to anybody else without it." And that's a very, very simple one-liner. But actually, when you realize like how effective that is, it's you. You've got to look after yourself, and everything else will fall into place. I thought I'd mention that before I forget that.
That's lovely. I'm going to share with everyone some of the definition of the overwhelm here on the chat, just so that you understand what I mean when time management is about managing the overwhelm, and it's all about this loss of control that we have of just ticking the box of the to-do list and not necessarily understanding, you know, why we're doing what we're doing. We're just managing our life, right, rather than leading our lives. And I think that's a good time to ask Alistair to introduce himself and his journey.
Hi, thanks Tanya, and hi everyone. So I started Tend Legal with my wife it was the same day as Eleanor. In fact, it was 1st of December last year. And I think quality of life or work-life balance was a big part of what we were thinking about, which seems a strange thing to say, because firstly, you know, no one starts a new business because they want a better work-life balance, right? You know, it's tough early on. And secondly, I'm not actually sure I believe in work-life balance as a concept. It's something I've kind of, I don't know, recently been thinking about quite a lot. And work-life balance, it makes it sound like there's two separate things which are in opposition to each other, work and life. And, you know, if you give to one, it takes away from the other. And I'm not actually sure what balance would look like. And that's something that I kind of, and starting a new business, you know, everything is thrown in together. Obviously, I'm working together with my wife. We have 3 kids who are between the ages of 4 and 11. And what I've realized is that everything, you know, work is part of life, but you're dealing with it all at the same time. So you're dealing with, you know, your client work, you're dealing with your picking up kids from school, making sure they've done their homework, preparing meals, and you know, all the other stuff as well that goes with running a business. So thinking about marketing and social media and networking and accounts, and it can get overwhelming. There is a lot, but I think the way I sort of settled on thinking about it is looking for not necessarily balance, but harmony, because increasingly there isn't a separation between work and life. And this, I think, for a lot of people with COVID, you know, those boundaries are a lot more blurred. You work at home perhaps, and you might not work the same hours. So it's kind of looking at your life as a whole. And I think that the things you mentioned about, you know, taking care of yourself and making sure you exercise, or those things that are important to you, whether it's, you know, spiritual practices or sport or your family or your friends, making sure that you're looking at all of those things and making time for them, and being quite regimented about it actually really helps. Like making sure you do actually put something in your calendar to say, I'm going to go for a run at this time, and you do it. Because otherwise, I think there is this massive danger that you think, I've got to do the client work, or I've got to do, you know, the accounts, these things that are crying out to be done, and everything else gets neglected. So yeah, that was sort of part of what we were thinking. That's part of our journey. And yeah, I mean, I'm not saying we found the holy grail of time management here, or work-life balance or anything, because I think it's something you just, you know, you keep striving towards, don't you, finding, and for us, I think the idea of work-life harmony, that's what I'm calling it. You heard it here first, work-life harmony, because I feel like if on the one hand, if your work is aligned with your own personal values, it's something, you know, you start your own business for a reason, it's something you enjoy, it's something you're good at, hopefully. And then on the other hand, the other parts of your life should improve your work. You know, if you're happy, if you've got enough rest, if you're exercise, all of that stuff, it should all feed into the same thing. So it's not like you're giving to this one and that's taking away from the other, and it's this seesaw. I think you know, if you have this kind of more aligned view. I know that's not always possible, but and to be honest, for the last few weeks I've not been getting that right at all because it's been so busy, but you know, there you are.
Thank you, Alistair. I'm enjoying this very, very much. Honestly, what you're saying here about work-life balance, you kind of explained a little bit your reasons why you've decided to set up your own law firm, right? It's to try and find this work-life balance, if I understand correctly.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that this concept of work-life balance, because it's a balance, right? It's never 100%, it's not exact science. So the way you described it is basically, when you think about the term being busy, right? We all thrive of saying, oh my gosh, I'm super busy. And we almost give value to the fact that we are busy. But actually, the concept is being busy with the right things, right? Being busy with what is actually your motivation, or what you want to do in your day to day. What is the energy behind your goals, basically? So it's not about setting goals or climbing that ladder of progress, but it's understanding on which wall you want that ladder to stand. And that's also a concept of Stephen Covey, who kind of explains the difference between goals and values. So basically, in coaching, and I'm sure that a lot of you are familiar with coaching and the concept of values, but values is very much understanding what is it that motivates me to reach a certain goal. And Alistair and Elena, you both shared, you know, there's health. Of course, your business is important, but what is it in your business that is important? Is it to actually create new relationship? Is it the wealth element? Is it having more time for your family? So there's a whole list of values that you can find on Google, but I was talking about it with Geraldine, and I've created a PDF document for you guys that you can actually do this exercise yourself at home. And there's like 50 values, and I'll give you a few. So there's security, learning, family, courage, personal growth. Those are a few concepts. And understanding what motivates you, truly motivates you, and whether you've actually got any time allocated for it. So if you have zero time allocated for growth, for instance, and you're actually just doing your to-do list, but you're not necessarily spending time on reading, because reading is maybe important for whatever you're working on, whatever project you're working on, there will be a dissonance here. You will be dissatisfied. And the overwhelm comes from this dissonance. So if you want to spend, let's say, more time with your family, but you have no time allocated for it because you're just rushing. And when you're rushing, you're actually telling your brain that there's a threat. You're not in the moment. You're always telling your brain, we have to go forward. And it's that dopamine effect. Okay, let's tick the box. But the dopamine effect has consequences, because you have the down moment, right? The dopamine effect is, you know, when you have cravings and you're constantly in that rushing. And we talk a lot about, okay, let's slow down, let's pause, let's monotask. And I know, Elena, you have some great tools for doing that, for pausing and focusing. But that's the big difference between dopamine and serotonin. Serotonin is the other hormone that actually makes you slow down. So rather than being constantly goal focused, you understand what are your values. So Geraldine has shared the value exercise there. So it's basically a document like that with a list, and there's instructions on how to do the exercise yourself. And I think it's just a great starting point in understanding, okay, what is actually missing in my personal life? What is actually missing in my work life? And there will always be something that is not 100% fulfilled. But as long as you work towards it, the balance will shift. And you constantly need to remind and ask yourself, so what are my priorities today? Is my priority a project that I'm working on at work? Is it clients, new clients? Is it networking? Is it my daughter getting and passing her assessments? Is it, you know, like there's a cycle of life that you constantly need to understand where you're at and check on yourself and pausing, because we forget to pause. I think the main key of time management is because we don't pause, we don't understand the overwhelm. We don't understand what we can control versus what we can't control. Like for me, the biggest overwhelm is preparing my kids on a Saturday morning to go to their football camp, the 3 kids. If you press the pause button there, you will see me thinking about what are they going to have for lunch. You will see me thinking about what I messed up the previous week, what I should be focusing on the following week for my coaching business. And I'm not in the moment. So you're actually telling your brain that there's a threat and you're not present. The kids will see it and it will escalate. So values is understanding, okay, what is it that matters to me at that time? And Elena, I'd love for you to share what other tools you use yourself to be focused and to be in the present moment.
Yeah, so for me, I like props and I like tools because although I'm actually not in my office at the moment, I would love to show you my sand timers. I've got some beautiful glass sand timers, which even if I don't use them, they look nice on my desk. But it's a 60-minute sand timer and it's a 30-minute sand timer, and I set them. And I get a task done. Like I can have a really difficult task that I've been putting off maybe for a couple of weeks, and I say, right, today's the day I'm going to do it, and I set my timer. And sometimes I'll try and beat it. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's just there, so I'm not looking at my phone or anything like that. So that's a really good way for me to focus. The other there's a few tips that I can really give that do really work. The first tip is to turn off your notifications on your mobile. That for me was life-changing. So I don't get any notifications, not from WhatsApp, not from social media, nothing. I just about get calls coming through because I do need to take them for my business, but I get no notifications, and I'm in control of my phone, of when I go on social media. Still spend a disproportionate amount of time on social media, but I do feel like I'm in control of that as opposed to my phone controlling me. Turn your emails to working offline as well. We are always on constant high alert for that pinging sound from our emails or from our phone. Turn those off. Work offline for 45 minutes. Get that task done. I can sometimes have a task that can take me 3 to 5 hours if it's a long letter that I need to draft, and I dread that, whether it's my own business, it's still difficult. It's hard, and I'm still doing all that work myself, and I'll break it up. I'll say, right, I will work on this letter for an hour today, I'll do another hour tomorrow, and I'll do another hour the next day, and I break it up into smaller manageable segments, and then I get through that task. The other thing that I've done is I've actually figured out what my optimal amount of tasks that I can complete in a day, and the reality of it is that it's actually 10. And it's not more than that. It's actually 10 tasks like I can quite comfortably complete in my working day. And I've actually set my working hours, which is just even peculiar for me to say this, being my own boss. And if anybody had said to me, when you started your own firm, you're going to work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, I would have gone, no, I'm not. That's not why I'm starting a business. If I wanted to work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, I would stay employed. But actually I have gone back to 9 to 5. And the reason for that is because I don't have to think about it. So I try and eliminate as many decisions from my day as I can. And what I've done by setting my start time and my finish time is I don't have to think about it now. It's 9 o'clock, I start, take 1 hour lunch break between 12 and 1, and I finish at 5. And what I do is I try and get my task done within that time. If I have, more tasks than that, I don't complete it, and I start to feel overwhelmed, and I start to feel like I haven't done enough, or you see all these tasks at the end of the day and you haven't completed it. You feel like your day's a failure, even though you've probably done a lot of really, really good work in that time. So actually it's about managing your own time and saying, right, how many tasks can I do, how many things can I do in a day, and do them to the best of my abilities, not just firefighting. And I've come from working in an environment where I had 250 clients, and we were firefighting, and it was damage control, and it was such an incredibly stressful environment to work in. I did not want to do that for myself, but I also think that if I was to go back, put myself into that employed position, what would I do differently? I wouldn't come in and have a task list where I'm scrolling through it and I don't know where to start, and I don't know where to begin. I would manage my time a little bit better. I mean, there's a lot of other sort of things that you can do. You can have a default weekly diary as well, where you can time block. So client work, marketing, business development, and working on your website, you can do that as well. That's quite helpful, and that does work if you have a lot of priorities. But for me, I use Clio Task Manager, and I don't know where I would be without that. And I just set my tasks, and I do my best to get through them. Ultimately, it's hard work. Can't hide from that. As much as we'd want to sometimes, we've got to get on with it. But when you then set your times and you starting and finishing at some point, you've got something to look forward to as well. You're like, right, I'll be finishing at 5, taking a weekend off, not working this weekend. So yeah, they're my tips.
There's a lot of great stuff in it, and I saw on the chat as well some great comment. If I remember, probably Louise was talking about how putting the airplane mode or removing the notifications were giving her anxieties, and I'd be curious to hear more about that. What I've seen with some of my clients, they were getting anxieties mostly because the things that were giving them anxieties, like for instance, the unexpected client emails that they would receive, the need to answer straight away, that sense of urgency of responding. Very often she was creating it herself, but also it is urgent to reply to client emails, especially as a lawyer, right? So she would create a time during the day to answer those emails. And as soon as she created a time during the day that was around midday to answer those emails, and also there was another time at the end of the day, towards like half an hour, that she would create at the end of the day, then this anxiety disappeared, because she knew that there was a time allocated for what gave her anxiety. So there's 3 things here to remember. Try and delete or delegate. And I saw there was something around delegation. We can bring that up as well. And I know Alistair was talking about it the other day when we chatted. So try and delete what you can and delegate what you can. Postpone what you cannot delete. And then schedule what you cannot postpone. Because sometimes we are prone to procrastination because we don't set deadlines on our projects. So when something doesn't seem so urgent, or we tend to not put a deadline. But I like this 90-day deadline concept, where you tell yourself, okay, I have this project, there's no particular deadline, but I'm going to set a deadline. It can be 90 days, you can decide what you want to do. And I know on the chat also read someone saying that they review their priorities on a weekly basis. And that's a very good idea. Knowing your cycle of life, your values, what's important to you, what you need to prioritize with your business and your life on a Sunday evening, it's a great time to actually check, okay, what can I delete or delegate? What can I postpone? And what can I schedule? Maybe something new that gives me anxiety or stress has come up. Let's schedule it. I didn't schedule any time that week. Let's create time for it. Let's make up time for it. And Alistair, I'd love to hear about if you have any specific techniques yourself or any comments.
Yeah, so I think I'd echo a lot of what you said there. I mean, one thing that I have found really helpful, and this was before I started my firm, was having a system that you can rely on 100%. So I don't know if you've read a book by David Allen called Getting Things Done. It's like a classic kind of time management book, and his whole thing is you look at everything in your life, so your work stuff, your family stuff, all of you, and he suggests you spend a weekend, and it's quite old, so it's all kind of writing it down, and look at all, and you have projects, you have tasks for each project, the next task, and you have a system, you have places you keep things, you have reminders, calendars, and it's much like something like Clio, but you have that system that you can trust. And so for me, I know that I used to find that I'd have a list of tasks. I just write out at the end of every day, I'd write out the things I had to do the next day, come in to work the next day, start working on the list. Some more things would come in. And by the end of the day, the list's a bit longer. And it's just so, it can be overwhelming. It's just a bit depressing because you feel like you're not making progress. But actually, not all of those things had to be done that day. So it was kind of putting pressure on yourself that you don't need. Whereas what I found is if you put them in a calendar, then you can see, well, I've got these 2 things to do today. The thing I have to do now is this one task. And you can do that with a clear mind that you know that everything else you've got to do is recorded somewhere. It will come up when the time's right for it. And you can just focus on that one thing. So it's having that system is so, so important. But also it means that when someone phones you up and says, I've got this urgent job, can you do it? You can look at your calendar and you know it's not just looking at a list of jobs. You're actually looking at, well, how much time have you allowed for each of these projects? Have you got gaps? Can you move things around? And that really, it enables you to give a better service, but it also enables you to be more confident about, you know, giving people deadlines or time estimates on things. And so that's something that I've really found helpful. And doing that, trying to incorporate things that are not working into that system as well. So, because I think all too often you focus on your business or your work, and you know, your mum's birthday present gets pushed to the very last minute. Whereas actually, if you can kind of think about these things and view those things as projects that have equal importance. You mentioned about, I suppose, on the topic of importance and prioritizing, the idea of the Eisenhower schedule, Eisenhower matrix. Sorry, have you come across that? So you have a grid where your tasks are either urgent or not urgent, and important or not important. And of course, you know, if it's not important and not urgent, you don't do it. If it's urgent but not important, you can delegate it. If it's and you prioritize them according to that. So you want to be spending your time working on the things that are important, even if they're not urgent. And that's been helpful for me as well. So loads of kind of those techniques and just helping you to kind of organize things. I mean, really, that's what it is, I guess, is having some sort of system that works for you.
And Geraldine, I remember that you wanted to add on to the delegating element and how Clio also helps create those boundaries.
Yeah, so even before we touch on that, I just want to go back to something I'm seeing in the chat a little bit, and it's a little bit about the anxiety of not being present or not looking like you're present. And I think some of that comes back to setting the expectations with whether it be your team, your clients, whoever it is. So for example, if you're using some sort of internal messaging tool like Slack or Teams, having a status up there to say your, you know, heads down time on this, having your calendar up to date so people can see, oh, they're in a meeting, or they're, you know, visiting a client, or they're in court. And then the other for clients, even autoresponders, so that they know, oh, they got my email. So they have it, they'll come back to me, and when should I hear from them? So little things like that around setting expectations it'll then remove some of the anxiety for you. Another kind of tool and tip I have is something that I do personally is with my task list, I will on a Friday look at what I've done that week. So oftentimes you're just, you know, flying through your tasks and your to-dos, and they move to the done pile, and then you never look at that, and then you just feel like you're overwhelmed, you're not getting anything done. But if you actually look at what you've done, you've achieved so much already in that week, typically. So that's something, celebrate the wins and the achievements there. And there's one that I've started using in the past week or so. It's more or the past month, I would say. It's more a practical tool. I've kind of set a time limit on how long I spend in meetings, so that I can actually achieve things and get stuff done. Google Calendar has a new tool that gives you insights on how long you're spending in meetings. It'll tell you if you've gone above your average. It'll tell you how much time you're spent in focus time as well. So that's really useful. And I guess really just analysing where you're spending your time and what's taking up your time. So really being diligent about recording time. And those are just areas touching on some of the stuff that Alistair and Ellen have brought up already. And then, yeah, the delegation point, when it comes to, for example, Clio, and having that, sometimes there's that anxiety around delegating tasks, and are people actually working on the thing that they're supposed to be working on, or you think they are. With tools, for example, like Clio, you can see, you can check, you can, what I use saying checking up, but you can, you know, click into the case, see what activities have been there, look at the activity feed for your firm, see what other staff are working on. So that takes a little bit, take some of the anxiety away. It's not saying that delegation is easy, and I think maybe Alistair might touch on that a little bit, just the kind of short-term pain sometimes for a longer-term gain. But yeah, that's some of the tips and tools I have there.
Geraldine, I just want to pick up on one of the questions that's come in from Zahra. What happens if you have lots of tasks? Okay, so the reality is, in law, we have hundreds of tasks. Like, if you could literally list all the tasks, they would be never ending. And that's just working as a solicitor. If you then open your own firm and you have your own business, that task list will just grow and grow and grow. So how it's going back to that, how many tasks can you realistically complete in a single working day? And I mean working day. I mean your 8-hour day, not, you know, this sort of like 12-hour working days that somehow have crept into our lives. You know, there's only so many things we can complete. And I was at a point where I was trying to complete a client bank transfer to send them compensation damages after I'd settled the claim. And it was at 10 p.m. and my eyes were going blurry. And I just thought to myself, I'm going to make a mistake. Like, something's going to happen and something's going to go wrong. And it's going to be catastrophic when it does. And that's when I realized nobody can be on top 24/7. It's not possible. There's only so much we as humans can do. And that goes for our work life as well. So tasks, prioritize the tasks. What's important for me to complete today? Like, for example, when I started my business, I set myself a goal of two new clients a week. That's it. And I prioritized that and I worked on that. Now I've got the clients. Now I want to sell cases. So to me, that's, you know, that those things are priorities. And I look at my task list and I say, right, what are the tasks that I can do that will get me closer to that goal? There's nothing that is incredibly urgent. Of course, we've got, you know, court directions, but we can set, you know, our tasks to, you know, in the future, like my court directions start at 28 days and then they go down every 7 days. So they're never going to creep up on me and scare me and say, I've got a witness statement due today. So it's about planning for those big urgent tasks, and everything else, just getting through them or rescheduling them. There's absolutely nothing wrong with rescheduling something for 7 days, 14 days. And you know what, at the end of the month, I look at my task list and I say, what are the things that are still there after 4 weeks? And I try and delete them. I just say, I can't get to them. It's not possible. I can't write this article. I can't commit to this podcast. I can't commit to this meeting. And I say no. And saying no is so incredibly powerful. And when I learned to do that, it actually brought me more opportunities. It gave me more clarity. So actually not being afraid to say no. Something as solicitors, we really struggle with that, whether it's our clients, our bosses, our family, we're people pleasers. And I think that goes for a lot of people outside of the legal profession as well. And actually learning to say no is an incredibly powerful tool.
Yeah, that saying no is the one of the hardest things to do. It becomes easier when you work on yourself a bit more and you understand what we were talking about earlier, your values, your priorities of life, your cycle of life. Pausing on a Sunday, pausing at a term and saying, okay, these are my priorities and I'm going to focus on that. So let's say for some clients is focusing on certain type of clients, for instance, during that term. And therefore other clients that might come their way, they'll say no to them, but they'll understand why. So saying no is easier when you understand why you're saying no to it. It's not easy, it's just easier. And it requires this self-awareness and this work and commitment to, okay, pausing and understanding, okay, what do I truly want from my business right now? What do I want for my personal life right now? I'm going to say no to things. It's saying no to things that you want to do, to do things that you really want to do. It's that little difference that's very difficult, right? And what Geraldine, what all of you were talking about, you know, the difference also of knowing when the day ends, right? When the day starts and when the day ends. Because that the transition of work to going back home with the kids is sometimes the most difficult. That transition of the certainty that you can get of working, which is not, we can be emotional, but doesn't have the same amount of emotions that maybe children might bring or other things might bring at home. This uncertainty makes us very uncomfortable. And sometimes we need to ask ourselves, what do we do in those periods of transition, right? Some people will go and get something to eat that's quite calorific, or just because they need to cope with that. And there are things that we do automatically to cope with that transition. So what can you replace that with that would be more beneficial to you? Is it going for a walk, breathing, exercising? What can you actually implement in that moment, listening to a podcast or just doing that transition? Because we scroll on social media, we're looking for things that give us pleasure, that instant dopamine effect, because this transition is difficult. And the same thing with transitioning, Geraldine, you touched upon the celebration of the wins, you know, of the week, etc. We barely never do that, right? And it's again slowing down and being like, okay, what am I celebrating here? I've achieved that. I got that client. I finished that task that I thought I was never going to finish, or I've answered all these emails, etc. And being like, okay, I'm pausing here. I'm going to be happy about that. It's a difficult, but it's allowing yourself and giving yourself permission to be in that moment. It's allowing yourself and giving yourself permission to telling your partner, if you're working from home, I need an uninterrupted time to do that task, even if it's reading an article or that you consider maybe is not that important as other tasks, but you need that to feel fulfilled today. So you're going to do that. So it's constantly pausing and checking on yourself. Okay, do I need to drink some water? Do I need to take a break? Do I actually need the bathroom before I answer this email, which we forget sometimes to do? We just carry on during the day. And there's something that you've all mentioned, which was knowing your pace. And I think there's a great teaching from the book Great by Choice, which is the 20-mile concept. And it's not necessarily about doing, for instance, so the 20-mile concept, just to give you a bit of background, is about two teams of explorer. One team of explorer, Alistair, you're smiling, so maybe you know about it.
Yeah, I read
this. One team of explorer, British explorer and Norwegian explorer, both going to the South Pole, roughly at the same time, roughly same weather conditions. They both got to the South Pole, but the Norwegian team got back home alive. The British team got back home, didn't got back home, and they all passed away, not far from a camp. Why is that? The Norwegian team basically decided that no matter the weather, they would still carry on at 20-mile pace. So if the weather was awful or nice, they would still do 20 miles. The British team was saying, okay, if the weather is beautiful, let's do, I don't know, 60 miles. And if the weather is all horrible, let's just stay at home in the tent and let's not move. So basically it's knowing your pace. And that's what Elena was saying, okay, 10 tasks is my pace, but maybe your pace might be 5, maybe your pace is maybe 2. It all depends. And so that's where delegating also comes into account, because if you know your pace, then it's easier to delegate, because there's another reason why you're delegating, because you can't do it all. And very often I find that we compare ourselves constantly, right, to others, whether it's in motherhood or fatherhood or at work, etc. We keep saying, how does this one do it all? How does it feel that, you know, it's so easy for that person? But we don't know what's behind. What are they delegating? Are they delegating, you know, the task of picking up the kids to school, which might be overwhelming for you? So it's knowing your pace is so key in time management. And it's a constant understanding of it, because there might be months where your pace is amazing, and even moments in the month where your pace is amazing, especially as women. But then there might be moments where actually our pace isn't great. So it's kind of understanding and checking in again, pausing on, okay, how is my pace this week? I'm looking at my calendar. I'm not going to be able to do all of that. What can I delete? What can I postpone? What can I reschedule, or what can I schedule properly or introduce in this week that I hadn't thought about? So I don't know if you wanted to add something about delegation, Geraldine, or if there was anything else that you wanted to add, Alistair or Elena, when it comes to...
Yeah, when it comes to delegation, that was something that was a bit of a game changer for me when I delegated, like outsource my legal cashiering, and things like that. And I'm looking to actually outsource a few more things, and it will, like right now, I realize what my pain points are, and it tends to be around finance. So I really want to look at, you know, delegating more of that, doing more of the things that I enjoy. But there's just a question here about avoiding procrastination. And I'm nervous about this question because I am so guilty of procrastinating. And even though I will do my tasks, I do procrastinate. And the difficulty that we have is that we can turn off all the notifications, but the reality is that we reach for our phone. The reason why we do that is because when we are faced with a difficult task, we want to get away from it. Okay, like physically we might not be able to get away from it because we're sat at our desk, we're working, we're you know, we're working our job. So we go into our phone, we go onto websites, and we go into a little comfortable spot where we feel safe. You know, it's social media, we know what's on there, it's fun, it takes us away from what we're supposed to be doing. And I am still really guilty of procrastinating. That doesn't change. I always say one of the biggest lies I ever told myself is if I started my own business, I'd never get Sunday dread again. And yeah, it's still incredibly real on a Sunday evening. Doesn't get any easier whether it's your own business, because the work is still hard and it's still there. But I'm wondering, Tanya, do you have any tips for avoiding procrastination and getting through your tasks on a quieter day? You know, I have a quiet day, and I'll be honest, I'll log off probably and go for a walk, but I can do that. And then sometimes I'll take calls while I'm on that walk if they ring. But I don't know if you have any tips if, you know, that isn't an option, or it's raining and it's horrible and you actually can't get out of your house.
Yes. Procrastination, I think, is someone, like I see on the chat, don't think anybody is not affected by it. And very often it comes when, like you said, the task is difficult or new, and we kind of avoiding it. And it comes from, it's an interesting origin, because it comes from, according to psychologists, it comes from childhood, when we were told to do things we didn't want to do. And basically our brain was saying, when I'm an adult, if there's something I don't want to do, I will not do it. And it comes from this, basically, this concept. And I believe it, because I see the results from coaching, because in coaching, there's an accountability element, right? So basically what we're doing today, I think, is a great example of anti-procrastination, because we are sharing our pain points. We realize that we are not alone in this. And therefore, we're actually giving ourselves the courage to continue and to carry on, right? And I think one of the main antidote to procrastination was the idea of knowing your pace and saying, okay, that is, you know, my pace of the week, and I'm going to push myself to do it. But I find that there's another concept that really helps with procrastination, and it's a concept called emergency reserves. So let's say the concept is, let's take a simple example like running. I'm going to run for 7 days a week. That's one way of seeing it. The other way is saying I'm going to run for 5 days with 2 days of emergency reserves. And the other one is I'm going to run for 5 days, right? If you set yourself the expectation of 7 days, it's unrealistic. You might end up running much less than 7 days. If you set yourself the expectation for 5 days, it's kind of the same thing. But if you set yourself 5 days plus 2 days emergency reserves, and that's been applied in productivity in companies, etc., very often you will run at least 5 days, if not 6 or 7, because you actually give yourself the 2 days. Those 2 days are not guilt-free, right? Those 2 days you need to have a good excuse for not actually running or doing the work. But it's kind of the same thing with your tasks. If you're able to say, okay, I'm gonna schedule in, I've got this massive project, I'm gonna schedule 2 hours a day for it. How many hours do you think I need? Okay, I'm gonna add some hours because I know that I might be procrastinating. It might take me a while to start that project, right? And I've seen that with clients that work alone, or they work completely alone, it really helps for them to kind of have someone that will check in on the progress for certain things. So that's why what you're doing now here at Clio, this webinar, is fantastic, because even though people take time off their work, they will realize, and it gives that confidence boost to carry on what we had planned during the day, and to see that other people are struggling with the same pain points. So I would say, if you can surround yourself with people that know what you're doing and kind of can check in on you, is also a great way of tackling procrastination.
I was going to point as well to kind of tie back to the beginning of the session around values. If you can tie the task that you're procrastinating about back to your values, you'll understand why you need to get that done, and it gives you the motivation then to go and do it.
Sometimes there's a good reason you're procrastinating. It's like, it's because it's not important to you. It's on your list, and actually you put it in, and you just think, well, maybe I don't do it, or maybe we find a way of, it's like you say, either delegate it or find a different way. And sometimes I think, or the reason for procrastination might not be the task, it might be that you're exhausted. And I think the original comment was saying, I'm really busy all the time, and then I have a quiet day and I procrastinate. And I find that sometimes as well. And I think sometimes it's just, you're actually tired, you need to have some time off, and then come back to it when you're fresh. So actually taking a break and actually getting away from your desk is better probably than just sitting there procrastinating. If you actually get outside and do something, have that break, and hopefully you'll feel fresh when you come back.
That's a great tip. Just to finish off what you just said here, it's been proven that when you go for a walk early in the morning, let's say you drop the kids and you go for a walk and you think about something challenging, the fact of going forward, the forward direction of walking or running, etc., really helps you tackle the challenges. So let's say there's something you're really procrastinating on and you're struggling, try and do that in the mornings, especially in the mornings or at dawn. I think it's all related to the light outside and the amount of light that you get, etc. And that really helps to kind of face a challenge rather than just sitting on your desk and not really knowing what to do. Just go for a walk, look forward, don't take your phone, and just look forward and think of the challenge. And that's a great way to prepare for a client. It's a great way to prepare for an interview, etc. It that way. So yeah, so that's a tip also that I found really useful for.
Yeah, I go, just really quickly, I go for a walk every morning before work, and I can't even describe the benefits that I feel. Sometimes I power walk back to my desk.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, we're at 12. We're at our time for today. I promise that we finish up on time. I'd just like to call out that this session, part of the Making of a Law Firm series, we do have our hub on the website as well. We'll be sending the recording out tomorrow, and you can catch up on all the other sessions from the series as well. I wanted to call out that our final episode is next month, coming up pretty soon. We'll be changing the time, so it won't be at the end of the month. It'll be about halfway or towards the beginning of December, and we'll have our 4 leaders back, and we'll be doing a look back, celebrating some achievements and tasks that are completed or on the list. And just wanted to say a quick thank you to Tanya, Elena, and Alistair for joining us today. It was a fantastic session, lots of great comments and help in the chat as well. Really appreciate it. And have a great day wherever you are.